and welcome to my first tutorial, creating rollover buttons using Photoshop. This tutorial is split into 3 sections. The first section will look at just creating a simple glass effect button using Photoshop. The second section will look at creating a second rollover version of the button. This is the version of the button that you'll see when you hover the mouse over it. The third section will be putting the 2 versions of the button together in Dreamweaver so you can actually see the rollover effect. Okay, let's start with section 1, creating a simple button using Photoshop. Today I'm going to show you how to create a simple button like the one shown here. We're going to start by making sure that the layers panel is open. I've got the layers panel here. If you haven't, go to Window and click on Layers. First step is to go to File, New and create a blank document which has a width of 200, a height of 50 and a resolution of 72. Press OK. There we go, so that's the size of our button. We're going to use the rounded rectangle tool to create our button. So you click and hold and go down to the second one. Make sure the style is set to none and then draw your rectangle. It doesn't want to quite fill the whole of the document. We need space for the shadow. So try and have it roughly centered. There we go. And then what we can do is double click just to the side of this new shape that we've just created to bring up the effects window. Okay, so here we can set the layer styles. Lots of different options like drop shadow. Now that's fine, but I want the distance to be 0. That means it's going to be in the middle with a slight shadow around the outside. I'm also going to set the size to 5, which it already is, so that's fine. Next thing to do is click on Gradient Overlay. I want to customize this gradient, so I'm going to click here. First I'm going to edit the color stop here by double clicking on it, and I want this to be a very light grey. Then I'm going to edit this one by double clicking and making this a darker grey. There we go. Press OK. Finally we want to add a stroke. Now this wants to be 1 pixel wide with a dark grey outline. If I just click on the background, we can see the effect we've got so far. Okay, so we've got a gradient with a 1 pixel wide border around the outside and a very slight shadow. Okay, so the next thing to do is add the text to the button. So make sure we've got the shape selected, and I'm going to click on the text tool. I'm just going to type home. This wants to be a relatively sort of dark grey, but not too dark. So it's just slightly darker than the light colour that we chose earlier. Click on the arrow and I'm going to centre it. Now you might be thinking that doesn't show up very well. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the blending style to colour burn, and you'll see if I just click away that it actually makes that a lot darker and it gives it a slight little gradient effect which matches in with the gradient of the shape. So the final thing we need to do to give it a bit more of a glass effect is to use the circle elliptical marquee tool, the second one down here. Draw an elliptical marquee so that we just sort of select the upper half of our button. We're going to fill this in white in a second, but first we need to add a new layer to fill, and then make sure we've got white selected as the main colour. Choose the paint bucket and fill that in. I'm going to change this opacity to about 18. Deselect, click on the background again, and there we go, we've got a very simple button. Okay, so we've created the simple button. Now we're going to create the version that appears when the user rolls over it. Okay, so the first step in creating a rollover button is to group all of the layers for our first version of the button into one folder. So I'm going to highlight them all by clicking on the first one, holding down Shift and clicking on the last one. I'm then going to go to Layer, New, and then Group from Layers. I'm going to call this Off State, as it's the state of the button when the mouse is off it. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy of this by dragging it onto the new layer button. Okay, and I'm going to rename this On State, as this will be the state when the mouse is on it. I'm going to click on this little eye so we can't see the off state, and then we can edit the on state to make it look different. There's lots of different things we could do to make it look different. One of the simplest things would be just to change the gradient slightly. So if I double clicked, I could, for example, reverse the gradient. Okay, that's one of the simplest things I could do. Press OK. There we go. So if I now hide that and turn the off state on, you see? So that's this normal state. That's what it will look like when the mouse is over it. So what we need to do now is we need to save this in a format that's suitable for using it on the web and in Dreamweaver. So with the on states active, I'm going to go to File, Save for Web and Devices. I'm going to make sure it's got JPEG selected. Quality doesn't need to be 100%, I'd say 80. Save, and then on the desktop I'm just going to make a new folder, Buttons Tutorial. I'm going to call this Home On, and then I'm going to make the on state inactive and make sure I can see the off state, and do the same with that. Should have the same settings we just used. Save, and this one I'm going to call Home Off. Okay, so now we've got both versions of the button created. We're now going to bring them together in Dreamweaver to create a working rollover button. Okay, so in Dreamweaver I'm very quickly going to show you how to insert into a blank page those two images as a rollover button. So I'm going to create a new HTML page. I'm going to go to Insert, Image Objects, and Rollover Image. I'm going to call the image Home, as it's the Home button. The original image is the normal version of the button when the mouse isn't over it, so I'm going to browse, and that's going to be the off version. Just press OK if that comes up. And the rollover one should be the on version. And then give it alternative text. I'm just going to call it Home as well. If you want to hyperlink the button to something, so you've got a page to hyperlink it to, you can put that in there. I haven't, so I'm just going to press OK. Right, so I'm going to save this test page in here, buttons test, and I'm going to just preview it in Firefox to see how it looks. So there we go. It doesn't actually link to anything. We can easily do that, but it does roll over. Nice simple effect, very easy to achieve. Okay, so that's our home button created. If we want to create more buttons, it's very easy to do. We just save a copy of it by going to File, Save As. Let's say I want to create my contact button. I'm just going to call it Contact. And we're going to change the text using the text tool to Contact in both versions. So there we go. So all I have to do is use the save for web and devices for both states of the button, so the on state and the off state. So we've got two versions of the button again, and then import it into Dreamweaver in the same way. And you can just save as many copies as you like and create as many buttons as you like. And that's it. I hope you found this tutorial useful. For more information, please visit arbennett.me.uk.